NFL games are won and lost in the trenches, and it starts up front offensively with the offensive line. We're going to be looking at the top 10 offensive tackles in the 2025 NFL draft here. This is a very interesting class. Not a lot of these guys that have listed at tackle or played tackle in college are probably going to be playing there at the NFL level. So even some of the guys on this list may be best on the interior, but we're going to go ahead and go right into it here. Starting at number 10, we have Charles Grant out of William & Mary, the redshirt senior. He's 6'4", 311 pounds. So he was playing at the FCS level, so that's kind of consideration number one with him. But he had really good stats, 90.4 PFF run blocking grade, 88.1 pass blocking grade, 9 pressures, 2 sacks allowed in 2024. And there's some really big things to like with Charles Grant. He moves really effectively. His feet are really smooth. He can get out and climb to the second level, get into space, locate defenders, and get his hands on them. He also has really good length for the position as well. That's kind of going to be a recurring theme for a lot of guys on this list, is that they don't have length. And this is a very short arm tackle class that just makes it easier for defenders to get into your chest because you don't have the length to keep them at bay quite as easily. So length in this class is kind of a rare trait, and Charles Grant absolutely has that. Has almost 35-inch arms. So that's a big kind of major plus in his repertoire as well. His ability in the running game is pretty good, especially in wide zone schemes where he can reach block really effectively, climb to the second level, get to a linebacker. That's kind of where he's the best right now. Now, there are definitely a lot of things to clean up, in my opinion. His strength, he's listed at 311 pounds. I think he was playing lighter than that at William & Mary. And I do think that at times his strength, his inability to anchor and really be able to stop the defender's bull rush, I think was a problem for him. And then his hands are another part of that. His hand placement is very wild. He bear hugs guys often, allows them to get directly into his chest. I want to see him swiping away defenders' arms more often, having more of that hand activity that, keeps defenders at bay more easily. I think that also comes with his grip strength and his ability to sustain blocks. He needs to do a better job of that as well. So Charles Grant is an interesting one. He is a redshirt senior, so he's not kind of this pure toolsy, ridiculous young prospect. But playing at an FCS school, there is probably going to be an adjustment. I am very curious what his best position in the NFL is going to be. I have seen center thrown around quite a few times, and I think that might be ultimately where he lands if he can end up snapping, because he's a very smooth mover. He's really good in the running game, climbing up, and I think that might ultimately be where he's best. But he does have the length and the body type to play tackle, and if you can play tackle, that's probably the most valuable position. So that's why we have him listed here as a tackle. It's where he played in college as well, so it should be interesting for him. Also, just to mention, he was a left tackle at William & Mary, just so, if you're looking for your team scouting reports, oftentimes these guys can move around, but good to know where they played in college. Next up at number 9, Hollin Pierce out of Rutgers. He is a guy that I was really excited watching his film. He's a senior, 6'8", 341 pounds. So this dude is gigantic. He does not have a length problem either. He has 36-inch arms. He has a ridiculously long wingspan. His size and length and power are not a question mark even a little bit in his game. His run blocking grade an 83.5, pass blocking grade a 79.5, gave up 21 pressures and 1 sack in 2024 per PFF. And for Hollin Pierce, he's kind of exactly what you would expect at a guy his size. He is really tough to get past when it comes to, bull rush, power moves. That just doesn't really work against him because he's so strong. He has so much length that can really, prevent you from getting into his chest and then bull rushing him. He has just such a strong anchor as well. He has great grip strength, the ability to latch on to a player and, not let go. He doesn't get a ton of penalties, but he knows, when to let go. But he has that really good sustain on his blocks. I think in the running game, he definitely can move guys off the ball, and that's something that you like to see. Though his movement and fluidity doesn't allow him to kind of be as effective in space and climbing up to the second level. That's kind of where a lot of the question marks with Hollin Pierce come up, is his movement ability, his footwork. Can he survive on the outside on pure one-on-one situations with speed rushers that are just going to fly around the arc and try to beat him to a spot? I think Pierce has decent feet for being as big as he is, but he definitely still does have slower feet. His change of direction is not very good because he just has a ton of mass that he's moving back and forth. So I think those are kind of the biggest question marks with Pierce. I do think he needs to do a better job as well identifying where the rush is coming from. A lot of these things are protections called by the quarterback or by the center, but being able to recognize stunts and blitzes and things like that, I think he can continue to get better at. Then his hand placement, sometimes he shoots his hands really wide. Would like to see him really use his vines for arms and be able to latch onto the defender's chest a little bit more regularly. So for me, Hollin Pierce, kind of a nice third round pick. I think he could go on day 2, will most likely be a day 3 pick, and I think will be really good because I liked a lot of the things that I saw on film from Hollin Pierce. I think he can be a solid swing tackle, and he definitely has the size and strength to be a starter if his foot speed can play in the NFL. Moving now to number 8, we have Ozzy Trapilo out of Boston College. He's a senior, 6'8" as well. Got some tall guys with these past 2. He's 316 pounds. His run blocking grade is 69.9. PFF pass blocking grade 80.5. Gave up 15 pressures and 2 sacks. And Trapilo is an interesting player because he is very strong. He has really good grip strength, can latch onto guys. His movement ability for, being as tall and big as he is decent. It's not probably the strength of his game. He's going to be best in kind of a power scheme where he's not asked to, really be super athletic and reach block and climb to a lot of these guys on outside zone. He can be effective pulling across a formation and, taking on a linebacker or whatever it is. He has enough mobility to do that, but he's not one of those crazy athletic linemen. Really, where he is the best is in a power profile, being able to, down block, pull, take on guys, that kind of stuff. That's really where he's the most effective. He does have shorter arms. For being 6'8", he pretty much just matches the 33-inch threshold that most teams have as a requirement for tackles. His block identification, I think, is generally decent. I think he can continue to recognize stunts and blitzes and those kinds of things a little bit better. The thing with Ozzy Trapilo, I just think he's a solid player. I don't think he really stands out in any one area, but I think he has good third round, late day 2 value because of the consistency that he had on Boston College's right side. He was a right tackle, and, I think he can absolutely come into the league and at least compete for a position. He might end up being more of a swing tackle, but I think he can be a starter down the road as well. I think with Trapilo, he reminds me a little bit of Mike McGlinchey, where he loses leverage a little bit too often because he is just so tall and he doesn't have these ridiculously long arms. I think that can sometimes get him into trouble, and he doesn't anchor as well as he, has the strength to do. And I think he needs to be more active with his hands, getting guys out of his chest, because he's not really winning the leverage battle very often because of his height. And he's not, 340 pounds like Hollin Pierce as well, where just that natural mass stops bull rushes. Trapilo is a little bit, he's, perfectly fine, 316 pounds, but he's not one of those gigantic guys. So he has to work on maintaining really good pad level and leverage. I think that might be the biggest area of weakness in his game, but Trapilo is a rock solid player. I think he's just really good across the board, and I think, he could potentially be a starter in the NFL here. Have a 77.59 round 3 grade on Trapilo here as well. Moving into number 7, we have Logan Brown out of Kansas, a redshirt senior, 6'6", 311 pounds. Had an 82.2 run blocking grade, 78.0 pass blocking grade, just gave up 6 pressures and 0 sacks this year. Was very good when it came to those numbers. And Logan Brown is somebody that I really did like. I was surprised by how much I liked his film. I think he has starting tackle upside. He was right tackle for Kansas, was a multi-year starter, went to Wisconsin, and then transferred to Kansas, has been there for 2 years now. He has kind of a lot of the things that you look for, has solid length. It's not ridiculous, but, he has enough length to meet the tackle thresholds. His strength is pretty good, especially for being, 311 pounds. He's not the biggest tackle, but he has good strength. His running game, his ability to climb and move, I think that there are areas of his movement where, his balance, his ability to maintain, really good side-to-side hip flexibility and leverage. There are some question marks, which is why his movement isn't super high, but he tested ridiculously well at the combine, was very athletic, has very smooth footwork. So, that movement tab does encapsulate multiple things. It's side-to-side movement as well as straight line athleticism, balance, all those kinds of things. So that's why Brown's a little bit lower there, but his movement ability climbing up to the second level and being able to take on guys is really impressive, digging them out in the running game. I do think that he needs to improve his first punch and hand placements a little bit better. He sometimes strikes really wide, allows defenders into his chest. And then being able to identify stunts and blitzes a little bit more efficiently as well. Sometimes he's a tick late doing that. But there's a lot of things to like with Logan Brown's game. He is a little bit older, but he's a very smooth moving player. I think he can mirror defenders really well, match their movements. I think Logan Brown can be a starting tackle. He played right tackle at Kansas, and ultimately I think some teams should give him a shot sometime on day 2 as a developmental potential tackle for their future. And I like Logan Brown a lot here at number 7. Moving now to number 6, we have Cam Williams out of Texas. He's a junior, 6'5", 317 pounds. And I'll be honest with you, Cam Williams probably has worse tape than anyone we've talked about on this list. And there's definitely big-time question marks on his game, but there is a ton of potential upside as well. You look at his run blocking grade, 70.8, 72.6 pass blocking grade, gave up 26 pressures and 5 sacks in 2024. And Cam Williams is a big-time question mark because a lot of the physical traits are there. You look at his natural strength, his length. He has 34.5-inch arms. His ability to sustain on blocks, has good grip strength, good power in displacement in the running game. There's some big things to like. He's kind of that power profile, played at right tackle for Texas, and he was a guy that definitely they ran the football behind because he can latch onto guys. He has good efforts moving downfield, and even if he's not the most athletic type of guy, he will try to climb to the second level and move guys and displace them. Shows some nastiness, which I like to see. You'll see him pancake a guy and then start talking to him, which I love to see that kind of intensity from my offensive linemen. And he is just a true junior. Most of the guys we've talked about on this list are 4 or 5 year players. Cam Williams is still really young, starting for his first year back this past year in 2024. So he doesn't have a ton of experience, and there are things that are really exciting about him. But there is big-time question marks in his game as well. His hands are very wild. He does not strike very consistently where he needs to. He has wide hands. He, constantly is having his hands swiped away, and I think that he just needs to develop a much better, more firm first punch that displaces defenders and allows him to control the rep. And then the biggest issue for me is his footwork and his ability to kind of mirror and match guys and use his foot speed out in space at tackle, which makes me wonder if he might ultimately end up being a guard, because I just don't think that he has the ability to match, especially speed rushers around the edge very often. I mean, you see even, Jack Sawyer, who's a guy who I really do like, but he's more of a speed to power type of rusher. He doesn't have elite bend and athleticism. Just took a 2-handed swipe and then a little bit of a bend to, strip sack Quinn Ewers and win them the college football semifinals against Texas. And Cam Williams was the one that got beat for that because he just didn't have the foot speed to match Sawyer out in space, and he didn't have the hands to, really be able to disrupt him as he was doing that pass rush move as well. So I think that combination is lethal for him right now, and not in a good way. I think it is kind of a big part of his problems. There are a lot of traits that an NFL team is going to look at and think we can get a starting caliber tackle out of this guy. Kind of somebody that's nasty in the running game, uses his power and his ability to, latch on to defenders really effectively and be able to turn this guy into a big part of our offense, which is why, I do have a round 2 to 3 grade on him. Now, like I said, he is definitely kind of more of a boomer bust developmental type of prospect than a lot of the other guys we've talked about on the list to me. But I think the intrigue of Cam Williams is going to ultimately make him go sometime round 2 or round 3, sometime on day 2 most likely. Moving into my top 5 now, at number 5, I have Aireontae Ersery out of Minnesota, redshirt senior, 6'6", 331 pounds. Had a solid year, 73.6 run blocking grade, 77.3 pass blocking grade, gave up 12 pressures and 1 sack. Yeah, I do think he had better 2023 tape than he did in 2024, but, I think ultimately you take the sample size between the two of them, and he has been a very productive player for Minnesota. He's a fifth-year player. There's a lot to like in Ersery's game. At 331 pounds, he ran really well at the combine, ran, I believe, 5.01, which is incredibly fast for his size. He has just over 33-inch arms, so he does meet that threshold, but definitely doesn't have the ideal length that you would look for a tackle prospect. And I think sometimes his hand placement, things like that, can be a little bit wild. He shoots him a little bit wide, doesn't get him directly into the defender's chest, and controls the rep super easily. I think there are sometimes still some concerns about him just being out in space on an island, his movement, his foot speed, ability to mirror and match guys. I think, sometimes shows up as, him being beat around the edge and having trouble there. But there's a lot to like with Ersery's game. I think he is strong. I do think that he can anchor pretty well. As long as he gets the defender's arm out of his chest, I think, he can lose his leverage a little bit as he is a little bit taller. He should anchor a little bit better for how big he is, but I still think he is a strong player. He has really good grip strength, ability to latch on, and I will say he has some of the best, active hands in the class. I think sometimes he does shoot them wide, but he will constantly be snatching guys down, where he'll take them down to the ground. He pancakes guys relatively often. In the running game, he is nasty. He can climb to linebackers, and he punishes them as well. He definitely has kind of that nastiness that you love to see in the trenches, and to me, Aireontae Ersery is kind of maybe not a guy that's going to turn into an absolute superstar, but I think as a solid round 2 pick, which is where I have him graded, you can expect to get starting tackle caliber play out of him. He may have some inconsistencies at times, but I do like Aireontae Ersery, and round 2 for me, I do think he can be a really solid player for a team. Moving now to number 4, I know this is going to ruffle some feathers. People are going to disagree in the comments, and that's A-okay. But at number 4, I have Kelvin Banks out of Texas. He's a junior, 6'5", 315 pounds, has some good stats, 81.0 run blocking grade, 89.9 pass blocking grade, gave up 10 pressures and 1 sack. Kelvin Banks is definitely rated higher than this on most people's consensus boards. To me, I have a round 2 grade on him, and just give me a chance to explain why. I think there is a lot to like in Banks' game. He's very strong. I do think that, he has a good ability, especially in the running game, climbing up to the second level, being nasty, displacing guys in the running game. And so there is a baseline floor of I do think that he can be a really good run blocker and somebody that creates movement and things like that at times. I also think that he's good at identifying blitzes and stuns, being able to pick those up. And, I do think that he has at least tackle caliber length. He doesn't have ridiculously long arms, but he can play that position and meet most of the thresholds that teams require. However, I did just see some really glaring holes to me that do give me some big time pause in evaluating his game. When it comes to his hand placement and activeness of his hands, I think he shoots his hands really high and wide very often, easily has them swiped away. I just don't think that his kind of first punch is very effective most times because it's easily swiped away. I also think that he needs to sustain blocks better and show better grip strength once he does get into the chest of the defender. I think, sometimes he just kind of out-leverages guys and then walls them off, and then, they make a counter move and he's not gripped on, and so that means that he can't control where the defender is going. I also think his balance is a major problem for me, and that's kind of why a lot of his movement grades are as low as they are, because I think he lunges a ton, and that causes him to get off balance. And, I think he just gets shed really easily at times. He's constantly on the ground, and that's something that I just don't like to see from my offensive linemen. I like when you're, pancaking guys and stuff like that, but too often to me, I thought that Banks was caught lunging, he was off balance, whether it was a guy putting a counter move on him or him just trying to get leverage in the running game, felt like he was always on the ground. And then also when it comes to his footwork and his foot speed, I think, oftentimes he does stop his feet as he's throwing his first punch, which causes his foot speed to be out of rhythm and ultimately slow to the spot. I saw too many times that he got beat around the outside corner, and it's not because I don't think he can, show decent movement ability out in space, but I think he just looks disconnected when it comes to his hands and his feet. And so ultimately, to me, yes, he has some good things going. Played it against SEC competition, was really good for many years for Texas. He has good tape, out there as well. I just think that there are big time question marks in his game when it comes to kind of the smaller nuances of it that can be a huge deal for an NFL team. So I still do have a round 2 grade on him, but I know I'm going to be lower on him than consensus. He's probably not somebody I'd take before the top, 25 picks is really where I maybe start considering him. Pretty sure he's going to be going before that. So Banks is just going to be a player I am a little bit lower on if a round 2 grade here at number 4. Moving next to Josh Conerly, a junior out of Oregon, 6'4", 311 pounds, 72.5 run blocking grade, 83.6 pass blocking grade, gave up 9 pressures and 1 sack in 2024. And there's a lot to like with Conerly's game. I think he's very strong. He's a little bit more compactly built at 6'4", 311. Those aren't huge for a tackle, but he still has enough length and power in his game, no doubt about it. And then what's really intriguing about Josh Conerly is his movement ability. Being able to mirror the defender's movement, being able to stay between the quarterback and the defender, just match that footwork and the foot speed out in space. I think that's what makes him really intriguing. I do think his hand placement, generally speaking, is pretty good as well. There are occasions where he'll shoot him wide and allows defenders into his chest and walks him back a little bit. But I think when his hands are well placed, which is the majority of the time, he has very good grip strength and ability to sustain and latch onto defenders and control their movement. I also think that sometimes when he's out in space, he can miss on his targeting system, kind of out in space, pulling and reach blocks, stuff like that. But I think that he definitely can be a starting left tackle for an NFL team. Towards the back end of round one is where I'd feel most comfortable taking him. I think he's mostly going to kind of fit that pass protecting left tackle mold. I think that's where he'll be best. In the running game, he's solid, but he can generate some movement, but really where he shines is in pass protection. So sometimes toward the back end of round one or early day two, I think would be a great sweet spot for Josh Conerly. And, I definitely think that he is one of the better tackle prospects in this class. Moving next to at number 2, we have Josh Simmons, the junior out of Ohio State, 6'4", 317 pounds, had a 68.7 run blocking grade and an 82.0 pass blocking grade. 1 pressure and no sacks given up this year, though he did only play about half the season. Got injured in the first game against Oregon and, ended up having a major knee injury. So there are still some question marks about that, his health. Supposedly, he's ahead of schedule. He's doing great. May even have a private workout before the NFL draft, which would be huge because Josh Simmons is a really good player. Transferred from San Diego State, has played 2 years now at Ohio State, and been a rock for them at left tackle, especially this year. At the beginning of the year, he was a fantastic player. He played right next to Donovan Jackson, who ultimately replaced him at left tackle when he got hurt, but that was a great 1-2 punch for the Buckeyes on the left side of their line. Simmons is pretty strong. He has kind of that more compactly built offensive tackle prospect, but he does still have the tackle length that he can at least meet the thresholds and be solid enough in that area. What's really great about Simmons is his pass protection and his ability to mirror and match defenders' movement out in space. A lot of times as a tackle, you're a lot more isolated than kind of on the interior, and so you have to have good movement ability. And I don't think that's a major concern with Simmons. He has really good footwork. He can mirror well, change direction to match defenders' technique. I also think his hand placement is generally pretty good as well. That keeps, he'll often keep a arm free and really use good leverage and good movement ability to kind of keep the defender in front of him. And then his hands work really well, kind of all as one unit with that footwork as well. In the running game, I definitely think he could be nastier, and that's kind of what I would like to see most out of him, is being able to really take on defenders and generate movement. He's definitely good enough at climbing to the second level and pulling around. In an outside zone system, I think his movement ability would really thrive. And, I think the biggest thing is just being nastier, being able to sustain blocks and latch onto guys at the second level. Really, there's not a ton of major concerns with Josh Simmons for me, besides the injury. As long as he comes back and everything sounds good on that front, I have a true round one grade on him, an 86.55, and I think he can be a starting tackle. He played right tackle at San Diego State, left tackle for 2 years at Ohio State. I think he can be a long-term starting caliber tackle for whatever NFL team drafts him. And then at number 1, we have Armand Membou out of Missouri. He's a junior, 6'4", 332 pounds. Before we get into Membou, I will certainly get the elephant out of the room. Will Campbell, I do have listed as an interior player. I really love his movement ability out in space, and I think theoretically he could stick at tackle with just how good his feet are and how athletic he is. But I don't think NFL teams are going to view him as an offensive tackle prospect. I think he's going to get the Peter Skoronski treatment where he is just kind of plugged into guard immediately, and he doesn't really move from there. And he's a really, really good guard. I'll get to him in our interior offensive line video once that comes out, but I think theoretically he could play tackle. I had him graded as a tackle, and then at the last second decided I really don't think he's going to play there at the NFL level, and I think he's going to potentially be an all-pro caliber guard. So I will get more into Campbell later once that interior offensive line video comes out, but for now, I have him listed on the interior, which leads to Armand Membou being my top-rated tackle here. He is a really fun player, an 87.6 run blocking grade and an 86.6 pass blocking grade, gave up just 8 pressures and no sacks at Missouri here in his junior year. Membou is a young prospect with a lot of upside on tape. He played right tackle at Missouri, and one other thing I really like about him is his ability in the running game. He's kind of that grading athletic run blocker. I think he would be amazing in an offensive scheme that uses a lot of outside zone, a lot of that Shanahan style stuff, because he just has great movement ability, and that shows up both in the running game and the passing game as well. I think, he thrives on being able to move to the second level, climb, and take on linebackers. In pass protection, using that movement ability, his feet are very smooth. You rarely see him get beat with speed around the corner. I think sometimes he can be a little bit late to anchor. You want to see him kind of transition into that anchor a little bit quicker. His length is solid, but it's not anything, absolutely elite, but it's good enough for this tackle class. And then his hand placement, I generally think, is pretty good as well. Sometimes he shoots his hands a little bit wide, but generally he gets it into the chest. I would like to see him have better grip strength and sustain a little bit better. Once he does kind of control that defender and get into his chest, I want to see him really sustain that control throughout the entirety of the rep. I think Membou is a really good player, though. I do think that he could potentially sneak into the top 10 of the NFL draft. I would feel better about him kind of as a mid-first round pick, but I think there's not a ton of guys that I'm going to see as a true top 10 grade in this class. So Membou might end up being around the top 10 for me when it comes to players in this class. Just such a smooth mover. I think the national media has definitely warmed up on Membou after the combine as well. How well he moved at his size was ridiculously impressive. Just when you look at his stats, he had 33.5-inch arms, which is good enough. He had a 4.91 40-yard dash. He was flying, 34-inch vertical jump, 9.7 broad jump, put up 31 bench press reps as well, which was excellent. There's a lot to like with Membou. I think he's strong. I think he's athletic. I think his pass protection and his technique is generally really good as well. So I see Membou as the best tackle in this class. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you think is the best tackle? Who did I miss on this list? Who should be higher or lower? Who do you want your favorite team to draft? Thank you so much for watching. Please, if you like this kind of video, hit that subscribe button down below. While you're down there, hit the like button as well. It's just a free and easy way to support the channel. You won't want to miss all the NFL draft content we have coming up, mock drafts, player reports, top 10 rankings just like this. So thank you so much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.